We got a lot to talk about with Russell Brock, the LSU beach coach, because we're coming down the home stretch of the NCAA season. His conference tournament is this week, the CCSA at LSU. And there are things about to happen in college sports, specifically beach volleyball and rosters, that I want to get his input on. Russell, hi, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks for the opportunity. It's always fun to chat.
Well, you got the CCSA tournament coming up at LSU, which for any of you who follow beach volleyball know, but if you've never been there, it's the finest on-campus facility for beach volleyball. It was once a tennis stadium that got converted. It's perfect for both fans, for the players, the experience, and to televise it because all the angles are just great. But you've got Texas, Florida State, and South Carolina in what is now a much smaller conference than what you started out with because of the way things realign with the MPSF. Let's go on. Let's start with that. Um,
Yeah, I think that you know, that attrition's been happening for a few years. I mean, even before MPSF came along, and we had so many teams in our conference, we had to do two divisions. We literally had two different championships within our conference because we knew that several of the schools were going to be transitioning to beach conferences, that their actual conferences were going to be starting up. So we kind of halfway split, and both conferences had over 8 members. So that was kind of the beginning of the transitions, as a lot of the smaller conferences started adding beach. Then a lot of the programs that were unaffiliated and were in the CCSA started to kind of lean towards these other conferences as they came into being. And then obviously kind of the last straw was the Big 12 and MPSF that started up and kind of solidified the fact that kind of everybody was finding a home. And so we got together, and actually even the CCSA administration transitioned out. And so we are, as member schools, and our administrators have taken on the role of actually running the conference this year for the final time. And we've got a fun little logo. It's the final run, and so it's the last chance. And then the great thing that we have is to be able to host. When we built the stadium, the idea was that we could host big events, and we've obviously had some great in-season events that we've been able to host with the best talent in the country. But to be able to host a conference championship is really special and a lot of fun. And so we're happy to do that kind of in the last run of our conference as well before we head to MPSF.
well, it's unfathomable to think that the folding of the Pac-12 would impact LSU beach volleyball so much, and that you would have a conference tournament that would include Texas. I mean, if we just go back a few years. So you guys go into the MPSF, and who joins you there from this group? Like, what happens to Texas, Florida State, and South Carolina?
Yeah, all of us are going. So we basically all were with it.
Oh, yeah, because we always think of like LSU and the Mountain Sports Federation. You know,
Yeah, exactly. And for me, it's kind of like a coming home. I played there in college, and now I get to go back and be a part of it as a coach. And completely unlikely, and way off script. A couple years ago, you wouldn't have even imagined that it was possible. But like you say, the dominoes, like ridiculously big dominoes, just fell into place, um, and so now that's where we're going.
the Russell played volleyball at USC, which of course was in the Pac-12, which is in men's volleyball in the Mountain Pacific Sports Federation, the aforementioned MPSF. And that ties in perfectly for what I want to ask you about. The two of our sports, meaning women's indoor volleyball, men's indoor volleyball, and beach, the two of them are being the most affected by the new rules and roster limitations. Now, you correct me if I'm wrong, but scholarships are being expanded. Like in beach, you're going to allow, if you can fund it, you're going to have way more scholarships, but you
Correct.
can't have a whole bunch of walk-ons. Like it's like in your case, you let Louisiana kids come on and be a part of the program, but that's not going to be allowed anymore. And men's volleyball is getting severely hamstrung. I mean, they've got such severe scholarship limitations, and now they're going to have roster limitations. Am I getting all that right?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I haven't, I mean, it's hard enough to keep track of our own sport. I haven't really seen um, what the roster limits are for men's indoor, or what their scholarship implications are. You would hope that they would kind of open up the scholarship limitations, but if they haven't for men's indoor, then yeah, that's going to be a real challenge. I mean, the whole push within AVCA over the last few years has really been to push and grow men's volleyball, and so a lot of times things that the NCAA does don't necessarily um, consider the real implications that are going to happen for some of the Olympic sports. And clearly, all of the rev share and all of the rules changes that are going to come through that are mainly geared towards the programs that are producing revenue, and that's football, baseball, basketball. So that's really the point of all the rules. Everybody else has to play by them, but it does make it really challenging, and it completely changes the model. Um, my opportunity to kind of ramble on this too, and I'm sure you'll have more questions, but you know, every sport, every program for beach volleyball kind of runs differently, depending upon where they are and how they do it. But like you mentioned, um, we're a long ways away from anywhere that plays beach volleyball for any real amount of time. Like it's so we and even the mandate from our administration when we started the program was we want you to carry as many people as you can possibly carry. We want you to have a deep roster. We want you to bring in kids who are going to be positive influences on our culture. They're going to carry high GPAs. Obviously, female athletes are a great thing to have on campus. So we built 23 lockers, and sometimes we had more than 23 kids on our program. COVID kind of contributed to that as well. But we were always running 22-ish ballpark, give or take. And that was because that's where they wanted us to be. So we had a lot of walk-ons. We had as many scholarships as you were allowed, but that doesn't go very far.
Let me jump in on that for a second. So, like, of course, Baton Rouge is not on the beach, but has become an established beach program. And then you take a player like Kristen Nuss, who's from New Orleans, who's become an international beach star and has become an icon because for a lot of reasons in the state, because she's both little and she's from Louisiana. And that gave you the opportunity to bring on other kids, wannabes who never will be, but still this opportunity. So, next year, how many scholarships will you be allowed, but how many roster players will you be allowed?
Yeah, the roster limit will be 19, and that's what everybody has to kind of navigate. Um, the scholarship is kind of a sliding scale, and it could even be from year to year, it could be different. And some programs won't get anything different. We're actually going to benefit from being able to have some additional scholarships, and that's going to be extremely exciting. But it also puts us in a really challenging position where we have to be way more conservative in our recruiting efforts because in the past, like you say, we've had kids who influence our program that maybe are or maybe aren't on the sand. Um, and they do a great job helping people understand who we are and making great contributions on campus and within our program. And the reality, like you say, is that there's a lot of those, particularly some of those Louisiana kids, that just won't get the chance to do that moving forward because you just don't have the wiggle room within a roster to bring on players that are like their main role is that culture piece, helping people understand what it means to be a Tiger, like the Louisiana flavor that they bring that helps us be who we are, and that's challenging for sure.
Um, so you could look at it on one side and go, well, you only play five pairs, so that's 10 people, and then you have a six in exhibitions, that's 12, which gives you seven reserves. Um, but it's not that simple, is it? And not especially not considering injuries for one, and the idea of conducting practices and all the other things that go with it. So what would be the case for other teams? Maybe not the same reasons you're putting forth. That why not be able to have five more walk-ons just because, and they don't cost you anything.
Yeah, I think the challenge is, and I understand it from the administrative side, is you're trying to create a predictable, finite budget. Because at the end of the day, the big Power Five athletic departments are trying to create $20 million that wasn't there before. and from year to year, to know exactly, not to the penny, but pretty predictably how much those programs are going to cost. Because even though those walk-ons don't cost, from a scholarship perspective, they still have meals, they still travel, they still have gear, they still have uniforms. Like there's still costs associated with adding roster players. And so, in a time where the administration is really trying to limit cost, one, and be predictable, from a budgetary perspective, so they can know, okay, how much do we have to go out and create? I understand, what they're trying to do and why it came down to a numbers issue. Um, and then, the kind of the other piece of the puzzle is 19, for a beach volleyball program is probably the worst number that you could possibly consider. We always play in pairs, so even at least would be great. If you're in training and you want to play on courts, then fours, multiples of four, is really necessary. So 20 would have been a great number. Even 18 would have been better. 16 would have been challenging, but at least it would have been great for a training aspect.
Can you suit
And
up
then
a manager?
you could theoretically do some practice players or other things like that, but or we've got at least two coaches who are very capable and interested in participating. So it's not out of the question, but
Yeah.
it just begs to consider, like,
Right.
what
Because,
number was chosen.
well, to your point too, which corrects me from before when I said about, like, so in practice, if you've got all five courts going, it's actually two versus two, which is four,
Correct.
where you come up with the number 20. So
Correct.
for the purpose of practice, right? So here's one for you. How about, we've relied so much and seen the big schools rely on big major money boosters to fund big things. Could another athlete on campus, like the quarterback, help fund the beach volleyball team? Is it going to, when is that going to happen?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, I did, and it is interesting. I think that's that brings up a whole different scenario where you've got, young people with lots of money, and how can they be productive in that? And I think some are doing a great job. I know Liv Dunn is, on our campus, and when she works her deals out, she makes sure that there's a portion of it that goes into a separate fund that pays female athletes on campus. So, I mean, I think that there are some athletes who are making some really good decisions. I've seen other stories where, they're using their funds to help pay off, debt in their family, or helping other people on their rosters. So I think you hear those stories. Probably not enough. I'm sure that there are more out there than we think.
I'm
But
thinking beach volleyball coaches need to do matchmakers, and you need to get, a beach volleyball player to date the quarterback who's getting 6 million. And part of the deal is he helps fund the beach volleyball program, or, the high level basketball. This is
yeah,
something we need to, circulate around the country.
hey, Joe Burrow invested in one of the pro teams, I believe. I
Yeah,
think he made a pretty big contribution, so it's a possibility.
Russell knows that we don't rehearse these things, and we never know.
That's
So
right.
let's finish these last couple minutes with the current beach situation. Your Tigers are sitting at about number 11 in the AVCA poll. I always tease Russell every year. You love to play as the underdog with a chip on your shoulder, but you really do have an uphill battle right now, because it seems like there's quite a dividing line. And unless somebody proves otherwise, it's USC and UCLA every year. TCU is very, very good this year. Loyola Marymount's good. Cal Poly's better than previous years. You've had some great battles with Florida State, who's coming in next weekend. Is that a fair assessment of things for right now?
Yeah, and last weekend Stanford made some big moves. So
Oh
I
yeah,
think,
I forgot about Stanford. Yeah,
yeah, I think more than any year, honestly, I think that it's a little more wide open. Obviously, USC and UCLA have proven that they're going to be there more often than not. But I think this year you've seen teams win. There's been a lot of quote unquote upsets. And as soon as somebody gets to the top, somebody knocks them off. And it doesn't knock them off just once. They like lose a couple times. So I think this year is the seating committee is going to have a really challenging
Yeah.
process. Even the voting from week to week. I mean, you can make a case for lots of different things, and even us, like we feel like we've been we've lost some
You've been close.
extra
So
three
close.
set matches, and we've also had some big wins. I mean, we beat USC at home, and we've beaten Cal. Like we've been right there where we need to be against the teams that are some of the best in the country. And the losses that we've had a couple. We have a 3-2 loss to UCLA, and we've had a 3-2 loss to Loyola, and so I think, and there's other programs that have had those kind of results as well. So I do think that, you're talking about top 6, 7 that are expected to compete, but I think you can run that down to 11, 12 in the current rankings and know that you can't be comfortable um, predicting what the outcome is going to be, because I mean there's one thing that's sure about our sport is that it's unpredictable. I mean, you don't know the weather's going to be, you don't know how things are going to show up, you don't know if people are going to come on their best day, and when you've got a swing of 2 points that can swing a match, then that's a pretty exciting scenario when you're looking at a national championship tournament that's going to have a lot of good and capable teams.
Well, UCLA is number one this week after having been number one maybe twice before in the poll and has 4 losses, which is more than, that's the smallest amount of losses that anybody's got. Well, we'll leave it with this. When they do show up on the Redneck Riviera in Gulf Shores the first weekend of May, two teams that always have a nice advantage are Florida State and LSU because they can have the most number of fans drive there in 4 or 5 hours. And it's always a fun event. Hey, thanks for taking on the explanation of what the roster limits mean, and best of luck this weekend with your home tournament, and have a good time in Gulf Shores.
Hey, we're planning to. Thank you very much for the opportunity. It's a good time of year.